Okay, this podcast was recorded in January of 2023. I held on to it for a little bit because I wanted to announce something very, very exciting. We have introduced the new website, so check that out, Drop-Tine.com. But even more exciting than that, I finally am introducing a new seed blend that I haven't been this excited about a specific blend since I introduced the Reload series back several years. The new blend is Ancient Grains for Wildlife. It is the first seed blend of its kind, sourced from ancient heirloom and heritage grains, specifically grown for wildlife food plots. We strictly source our ancient grains from farmers who follow the soil health principles and regenerative farming practices. It's a spring planted blend, and I've added 3 ancient grains, 1 heritage grain, and an ancient buckwheat that was grown specifically by a regenerative farmer who we have vetted. Ancient and heirloom grains are far more nutrient dense and carry up to 40% higher protein than modern grains. Our selection of nutritionally superior grains possess higher concentrations of antler-building vitamins, minerals, and secondary compounds. They also offer medicinal compounds for wildlife and possess a noticeably sweet, buttery flavor. This, honestly, guys, is the result of 5 years of research conducted by yours truly. I wanted to vet this. I wanted to make sure this is exactly as exciting as I thought it would be. Our spring planted ancient grains and heritage grain blend was sourced, like I said, from highly vetted farmers. We took it an extra step. We made sure that these farmers were practicing regenerative ag, they have healthy soils, and they're committed to growing nutrient-dense seeds in biologically active soils. There are no middlemen. We're actually sourcing all of these ancient grains, nutrient-dense seeds from family farms, some small, some pretty big, but it's all in complete transparency so that we can work with the growers to craft the highest quality seeds in healthy soils. Boundaries, like rules, guys, are made to be broken. With the Reload series of blends, we most certainly broke a lot of rules and led the way. There are a lot of followers. I'm super excited about that. But as soon as we released Reload, we were on to the next phase, and I'm excited to finally have this available. You can jump on Drop-Tine.com, and one of my favorite ways, of course, I want you to shop around and look at the new site, but if you're looking for ancient grains, just hit that little, magnifying glass, I think it is in the upper left-hand corner of the new site, and punch in ancient grains, and it'll pull it right up. Just real briefly, some of the benefits, and I put these on the site, up to 25 to 30%, and actually I found some research up to 40% more protein in ancient grains than modern grains. The seeds are 2 to 3 times larger than that of modern wheat. They're giant, they're sweet, they're buttery. They actually use them in artisan breads and pasta. And like I said, they are grown and vetted by verified regenerative farmers to support new markets for family farms that focus on quality over quantity, which has always been my driving force. I'm super excited about the fact that these ancient grains have proven to have larger root systems than modern wheat. And as you know, if you listen to the podcast often, it's the roots that are vitally important to rebuilding soil organic matter and feeding microbes. Again, we sourced in a transparent manner directly from family farms, no middlemen. What else is there? Let's see. Oh, untouched by modern plant breeding programs. And I don't want to give away too many major points. We have podcasts lined up to talk about the specifics surrounding our ancient and heritage grains. But these modern programs, guys, if you look at the consolidation of the seed industry, the large multinationals, Bayer and those folks, are buying up the seed companies. Why are they doing this? It allows them to further control the food supply and the conventional form of farming. So now they own the chemicals, they own the seeds. Obviously, they genetically modify them. And then at the same time, you have folks like Bayer who just happen to own the pharmaceuticals to treat sick people. There's no irony here, guys. It's obvious. So I'm super excited. There's a whole lot more surrounding our ancient grains. I guess as a teaser, I'll just go ahead and say you will find things in this blend like einkorn. I'll just go ahead and say it. Einkorn is actually the first of the founding grains I have enjoyed so much for the last 5+ years, learning about, actually rediscovering some of these ancient grain varieties and learning what they can do for our soils in our regenerative programs and ultimately for our wildlife. But einkorn is cultivated during the Neolithic and early Bronze Age throughout the Fertile Crescent, as most of these ancient grains were, as you'll find out in future podcasts. So again, super excited. I know you're going to listen to this podcast and enjoy it. Thank you for listening, and here we go. Hey guys, it's Jason Snavely, certified wildlife biologist and founder and president of Drop-Tine Wildlife Consulting, the Drop-Tine Seed Company, and of course, Drop-Tine Podcast. Guys, I've 17 years private wildlife consultant, graduated from Mississippi State University, and one of the things I really enjoy doing is traveling the country and watching clients realize their dreams of taking a small piece of property and turning it into something really special. All right, I'm pushing buttons here. It's the new year, first podcast of the new year. So happy New Year to everyone. I know it's probably late by the time you're listening. It's still early January, and oh my, do I have a lot of really exciting projects going on. So super excited about that. I do want to say we're already, we never stop shipping seed, by the way. If you see a notice on somebody's website that they're not shipping until spring, then they're clearly brokering seed, or I'm not really sure what they're doing. We are, now that I source it, talk to growers, we're just chock full of seed, exciting seed, a lot of neat projects coming on. Now that I get to work with growers in this new capacity, the transparency is not only exciting and informative for me, but I get to talk to them and ask them questions like I like to do. And one of my favorite questions for growers, these are the folks who are actually growing out the seed that all of the wildlife or just ag cover crop people are selling in general. We're all competing for the same growers, by the way. There are some distinct differences, as you'll learn in 2023. 2022 was sort of the year for me of nutrient, I guess density is the word we will use. We'll probably talk about that a little bit today. And 2023, you'll see some products, new products, in several more. I don't want to say too much because of problems in the past, but super excited about that. But the biggest question I ask these growers, which has been really informative, is what is the number one, or what are the number 1 and 2 questions my competitors ask you when sourcing seed? And it's kind of cool because none of them have hesitated. I thought it was a great question, but none of them have hesitated, and they all say price, period, price. Everybody in your situation, whether it's for agricultural use, cover crops, food plots, you name it, it's all about price. And for me, it's never been all about price. And I think for our guest today, he can talk to that point a little bit as well from a quality standpoint and a nutrient density standpoint. So I do want to say Spring Reload has been shipping like crazy already. It's the first week in January. Just did a custom blend for a client in Texas who we will be planting actually pretty soon because of some past experiences planning too late. Some risk, yes, but you can't hit a home run without swinging for the fence. So, again, some really cool products, but this sort of the meat and potatoes has always been and will always be those reload products. And then, of course, the major lineup for the fall reload, full draw 7, fall fuel, and 2 or 3 others. I do want to bring my guest on today. He's busy. This is somebody who I don't know why I haven't had him on yet. I guess the reason is because he is busy and I'm busy and we just haven't made it happen. So he should have been one of the top 3, in my opinion. A really good friend and has been extremely loyal when others have not in this industry and some others, as many of you know, the true story behind that. So my guest today is, I'm not going to build the suspense like I normally do, is Steve Groff, fellow Pennsylvanian, down near Holtwood, PA, which I believe is about 15 miles or so south of Lancaster. For non-native PA, it is not Lancaster, it's Lancaster. He owns Cedar Meadow Farms, and he believes, I love this, better soil, better oil. And we'll get into that a little bit more here soon, but I want everybody to sort of put this into context. This whole no-till, regen, soil health, whatever buzzword you want to use. I'm not on social media much anymore, if at all, but it's sort of blown up here in the last, I guess, 5 years, more so the last 3 years. And I'm referencing the wildlife, I guess, niche space at this point. But in 1982, Steve had graduated already from high school, and he was, from my understanding is, Steve, I never really addressed this with you, but you were urging your father to sort of eliminate tillage, et cetera. And then in the 90s, I want everybody to think about what they were doing in the 80s and the 90s. In the 90s, Steve gets into cover crops. And when I think about cover crop legends, I think about Steve Groff and his well-known hat. I don't know anybody else who has traveled so far and wide to talk about how plants fix dirt from a standpoint of cover crops more than Steve Groff. And we were just talking before this, Steve and I couldn't remember, but Steve had an incredible platform called Cover Crop Innovators that I was actually introduced to by a mutual friend of ours, Chris McCracken, who's a great dude. And Steve said to me, Jason, I'm selling Cover Crop Innovators, but would you be interested in talking about your wildlife work in our last episode or our last recording? And I told Steve, I said, Steve, I don't know if that's good or bad to be closing down and shutting the lights off, but absolutely, because I was always a fan of that platform. You just you put a bunch of people together and you innovate, and to me, that's what built America, and that's what great things are all about. So, anyway, I jumped on there with Steve and his incredible members, and I had a PowerPoint presentation made, and I told Steve how much this meant to me because, for context, we couldn't remember if it was 2018, 2019. As Steve pointed out, it was before COVID, sort of as a reference point. So I'm going to say 18-ish, but that was 3 or 4 years after I had spent some time on my place after visiting with clients, and I knew something was not right about the agricultural practices that we were employing in food plots. So I jumped on I had been no-tilling already to an extent, but I jumped on the diversity and really, just started studying this whole niche. I personally think you could find that little talk. It's about an hour long, I think, on YouTube. And I actually went back this morning and put it on and replayed it for context, because in roughly 1920, maybe even 2021, in hindsight, so one of the comments I made in this is kind of interesting, because I was hoping others would follow and join and join this group of innovators and, not necessarily steal or imposter, but kind of help us move this forward. So I went back and I just watched it for context and just pulled a couple clips out, just like a minute, half a minute here and there that I wanted to play to perhaps draw your interest to this YouTube. And I think it's going to set the stage up for our conversation today. So here's one that I pulled out. I thought it was sort of fitting. And then the diversity. When the diversity came into play, that's when things really shifted for us. The no-tilling was nice, but without the diversity, we just didn't get where we wanted to get. High plant diversity is extremely important for herbivores to, in my opinion, to demonstrate diet mixing and forage sequencing. These are all things I think we will hear about more as researchers get into this. And, food combinations, the grazers with sheep understand food combinations and forage sequencing and diet mixing. So I'm looking forward to all of that. We've sort of incorporated that to an extent, into our wildlife plots. So, I think when we get into the diversity here, we just said, you know what, let's really allow our individual animals, individual bucks or individual does with fawns to pick and choose plants, that vary in primary and secondary compounds. And, maybe their meals are based on exposing deer to complementary blends and diverse plantscapes. And we have really changed the game with this whole attitude and mindset. So this is a picture I just stuck in here actually while you guys were talking because I took it yesterday. So again, that was just kind of a blurb I pulled out of there. I want to point out, and again, that was after 3 to 4 years of doing this. But I want to point out that, here shortly I'll mention in one of these clips some of the people who were instrumental as I looked around and said, hey, I'd like to incorporate a lot of this into our wildlife programs. And at the time, I did not go direct to seed growers. I went to existing companies to sort of take advantage of that scale. And they laughed at me, they scoffed at me, and they basically, they couldn't help me until finally Gabe Brown sort of led me in one direction. But here's another clip that I thought was sort of fitting for today. So speaking of the Reload series, I'm going to go along through here pretty quickly. The Reload series, Steve, you probably remember this. I got together with the David Branson, Steve Groffs, and Ray Archuleta, and Gabe, and Chris McCracken, and Rick Haney, all those guys, and said, all right, the typical food plotter doesn't want to chase a carbon-nitrogen ratio. He doesn't understand most of these species. In fact, a lot of the seed suppliers kind of laughed at me when I said I needed plantain and safflower and flax. They thought that was a joke. They laughed at me, not with me. So I finally got together, as you'll see here, with Green Cover Seed, and Keith and Brian Burns worked with them as well. But we decided, we really need to reload. Reload kind of plays off the whole hunting industry. We need to reload, regenerate, restore these soils with annuals first and foremost, get these nutrients cycling. And the idea was to not use any synthetic herbicide or fertilizers at all. And in fact, no chemical pesticides at all. So the spring reload was sort of the start, 17 different species and varieties. These change constantly based on what I'm seeing in the field. And then obviously we came out with summer reload. Obviously, everything there is probably, pretty, everybody's heard all that. And I'll close out the clips, hopefully drawing a little bit more interest for this talk, which I think, again, goes back to that 2018, and it sort of sets the stage for what has occurred in the last 2 or 3 or more years, I guess, already. Here's the final clip. And the fall reload, since really fall is sort of our cash crop time, if you will, that's when we're hunting, that's when we're harvesting. We changed the paradigm on this, and we said, okay, we firmly believe we can meet the soil quality demand, and we can also still attract whitetails and carry over enough species into the following year so that our food plots the following spring don't look like basketball courts or parking lots, right? We want to cover those soils. So we decided that we better hit all of the major plant functional groups. And this is where I think the food plot industry has really failed miserably. And it's my hope that they'll follow along, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So the first major plant functional group, obviously, I think what from those clips, what sort of made me sit back this morning was, wow, we've come a long way in just 5 years or 6 years. And many of you probably know the story, and many don't, with Green Cover. I'm thankful that I went there, thanks to Gabe Brown, who said, here's somebody with a lot of diversity who won't laugh at you. I learned a lot of very valuable lessons from that experience, unfortunately. And Green Cover was not in the wildlife business at the time. In fact, it was expressed to me that they did not want to get into the wildlife business, which again was evidence of people who were not innovating. They were stuck in their mindset, including Keith Burns. I love Keith's podcast with me. I love his carbonomics talk. Unfortunately, don't love his decision-making process, but that's my personal opinion, not my guests. And then some very good people, fortunately I have a lot of them in my life, came around and said, listen, Jason, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, that mediocrity can pay to greatness. And I quickly realized, holy cow, we are on the innovative cutting edge of all of this when we are creating proof of concepts for people, even sometimes those within our own camp, to recreate. So super exciting stuff. And it made me realize, Steve, I'm going to let you talk now, that we were innovators in that particular, even though we closed out your cover crop innovators, I think we led off to something really neat. And I don't know that you realize that you've had that impact, but you have. So I'm going to go ahead and let you talk a little bit. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Hey, thank you, Jason. It's just a pleasure to be able to share some time with you and your listeners, because this is really, really fascinating journey that we are all on. And I call it a journey that's very intentional, because I don't even know what the destination is. Although I know the direction we're headed in our journey is better. Better soil. We talk about better plants, better deer. And then, we all eat as well. So as we deploy regenerative agriculture, is what I'm going to call it, into our cropping systems, into our deer herd management and all that, we end up with better food to eat. And just like it translates into deer, we're looking at antler growth a lot of times and herd health, the same can be said for people. So appreciate the background information and a lot of good respected names that you have included there. So I'm looking forward to our time together here, Jason, and I'll be able to help wherever I can in this context and this conversation that we're having.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And I don't want to talk too much about that stuff, but I will say that you, Rick Haney, and Gabe Brown were three of the most influential. Oh my God, I called it a panel at the time of about 10 or 12. And you were committed, and you've provided an incredible amount of help. So what I want to kind of cover, you've traveled the world, which always, there's a lot of people out there who talk no-till cover crops, but the neat thing is your historical perspective. You've been around, you've been doing it for a long time. Is there anything that you see? You're probably one of the very few who has watched it blow up. So from the very beginning.
Well, I'll tell you, Jason, I never in my wildest imagination dreamed that I would be seeing the adoption that I've seen, let alone talking to a wildlife guy. I am a hunter, by the way, and I'll put it out there for the audience. I have killed 108 whitetails, but I am confessing I'm more of a meat hunter. So let's just get that out of the way. But I have shot my share of whitetails in my hunting career. So I do love wildlife. Of course, here in the farm, we observe them and everything. But, from a global perspective, it really boils down to we all have challenges, we all have successes. That's everywhere you go. They certainly do look different, but as you've all heard before, the principles remain the same. One of the things that I would like to challenge us all in is whenever you hear anybody speak about their successes, what is their context? What is your context? Sometimes it's dramatically different. I just had a phone call from this morning from someone here locally, and they said, "Well, I heard this. Do you think I can do that here?" And I said, "No, you can't. It works for there, but it won't work here. I've been there, done that." So that doesn't mean we don't try. But before you, I'm going to say, waste a lot of money, you need to have people like Jason and those who are experts in the field to be able to translate some of that. And, we get passionate about what we do. And sometimes, it's not like we're misleading everybody, but that just may not work in Pennsylvania, what may work in upstate New York, for example. The other thing I want to mention at this stage of the game, that if you're not committed, so I said context, right? Remember the C's. You got to have your context, but then maybe even more important is commitment. If you're not committed to make this work, and it's not a cookie cutter recipe. Nobody has that. Yeah, you can go off of what people have been successful in, but you have to be committed as a student to learn not just from other mentors, but to learn on your property. The fellow I was talking to this morning, I was like, he just was trying to get a prescription out of me or a recipe. And I'm like, I could tell you a few things, but at the end of the day, you are going to have to make your own journey. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to make your own commitment. And that involves starting small. Well, yeah, learn all you can, but you got to be a student. You got to be an observer. And that's an art that we've lost in agriculture. And, I understand food plotters and so forth. And I guess I will maybe prod a little bit that sometimes food plotters think they can solve everything with money. Mm-hmm. And that's not always the case when we're talking about biology. There has to be a lot of forethought put into this. And that's the thing I would really encourage those of you who are listening to this to, if you want to get the results that you hear about, most of those people that have done that are committed. And it's impossible to share in a podcast of a short time like this, or a speaking slot, or even a book. I mean, I wrote a book, The Future Proof Farm, Changing Mindsets in a Changing World, and even that book is somewhat limited in what I'm able to share on those pages. But I wrote that book to inspire people and to encourage them to go out and do their own observations and research and all that stuff. So commitment. If you're not going to be committed to making this work, you might have to decide that it may not work to achieve the goals that you want to get, because it's not a cookie cutter approach.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. It's funny. When I say I'm not on Facebook or social mm-hmm. media a lot, and mm-hmm. Whatever some people it works for, I get a lot of these screenshots now, and I appreciate that some days, and most days I don't. But mm-hmm. a friend sent me one the other day, and this fella said that basically this, food plotting, regenerative stuff, and soil health, and I don't know what the context was because mm-hmm. it was a screenshot. But he said, "Oh, that's just a bunch of city boys who've never farmed before." And I thought that one was cute. Never. If I was on, I probably would have spent all day on that clown. But it's not worth it. It really isn't. But no, I'm glad you said commitment, because I can think of clients right now who, before you said commitment, you said we're sort of leading, and I'm paraphrasing, we're sort of leading and learning. Not that nature's way's new. And not that the way we're doing it is new, but it's counter. I guess we're swimming upstream for sure. Mm-hmm. So I tell clients a lot of times when they get frustrated, I said, "Listen, if you're looking for easy and a chemistry set, just go down to the co-op and do what you used to do. And honestly, if that's what you want to do, I'm okay with that. I'm not here to sell you. Right. But I can think of many clients all over the country who have just blown my mind with how committed they are. And there's some days where I scratch my head. And you mentioned that before you go spend a lot of money, I still spend a lot of money. If my accountant's like, "What do you do?" I think didn't you learn something here already? We keep spending money on this research, but there's only one way to know, and that's to try it. And I'm glad you brought up commitment, because everybody, like your caller this morning, is looking for that For Dummies Cliff Note. Show me how to 1, 2, 3 it. And no, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right.
So I read something here recently. I know you made the list of no-till legends, and that's certainly I don't know if you even know it. But certainly well deserved, and I would consider you a cover crop legend, because I think those are two different things. But I saw that. I know you're a big TV star now, Farmer Steve, with the hat that's just recognized around the world. But I saw you make a comment, or heard, I don't know where, I just pulled it out, but you made this comment either on TV or something, Fox News, I don't know. It says, and I quote, "If we truly understand that the way we grow our food impacts its nutritional value, then we can discover how we fend off poor health with a nutrient-dense diet." So that's kind of my segue. Those who listen to my podcast know I firmly believe in nutrient density. I firmly believe that a seed, a plant, the wildlife, anywhere up the food chain to humans and beyond, is a function of the biological activity and the nourishment and fitness of that soil. So what did you mean by that statement?
Well, it's a loaded statement, and I did write that statement. It took a while to get that sentence crafted to really be concise in trying to describe what I do. So the whole thing of nutrient density has been a journey in itself. And we all think, well, I want to know how to pack the most nutrients in my food plot so the deer, will benefit from that. And for those of us in agriculture, same for the food. The problem we have run into, those of us who have been in this space, we don't know what it should be. What should nutrient density be? What should the nutrient levels be? What we do know is what the averages are. And then particularly for food, we know that in the last 50 to 100 years, the density of our food, the nutrient levels of vitamins and minerals has decreased. There is absolute agreement on that. There's enough data. We can't go much beyond 100 years. But in the last 100 years, the nutrient levels in our food has indeed decreased. But then we ask the question, okay, we know what average is right now. Okay, we can do better than that, but where should it be? And also, how do we bring it back? And I'm going to tell you, it's again, not as easy as it sounds. I mean, what we're kind of used to in agriculture, you take a soil test or you take a tissue test, you add what's missing, you add what's short, you add what's not quite there. And as in anything with I'm just going to jump at it. As in anything with biology, you change one thing and then it changes everything else. And sometimes it's not easy to track. It's not like putting a missing puzzle piece in to complete the picture. It's just not that. You have to rearrange the puzzle or rearrange the picture on the puzzle. Maybe is a better analogy. And so this whole nutrient density thing is an admirable goal, and I'm smack dab in it, and I'm trying to figure it out myself. But what it comes down to is what we really need to focus on is the microbes, or I'll say the biology. That covers the life within the soil, and then we get down the microbes. The microbes are designed to function to be able to release nutrients to the plants. The plants are designed to provide food through root exudates. Now, we're starting to get a little deep here, Jason, but it's good to know a few of these basics. Provide root exudates or sugars that a plant collects from the sun, and it puts it down in the roots, and actually the roots leak. Plant roots leak. They leak exudates, sugars, feeds the microbes. Microbes then go around and help to release minerals that are in the soil. So we have some of our soils are so bad, We got so much stuff that might be there, but it's tied up or it's not available for a given plant to use. So when we start looking at some of the harsh chemistry we've been adding, the harsh chemicals, the harsh fertilizers, the microbes weren't necessary or they're killed off. So they have been really, pushed back. So we don't have the life in our soil to bring back the nutrient density that we crave. So it's not so much putting a little bit more calcium on, or some of the minor ones like selenium and some of the immune boosting minerals. It's not so much just putting them on. It's more important to get the microbes happy and provide a habitat for the microbes. So that's where I'm kind of at now. I'm looking at, and of course, cover crops help with that. Less disturbance, no tillage. That all helps with that. But at what point do we take what we know today and then enhance it even further? And I think that's where, the buzzword now is regenerative agriculture. That's what regenerative agriculture is trying to do, to regenerate the soil, to bring it back to where it was. And, all our wildlife listeners here understand, and just think about this the next time you're in the woods and the deer aren't moving, you can start looking around and start thinking, how does this all work? Because most of the areas that we hunt, there's no man-made intervention. And you go out in early archery season when the leaves are still on the trees, looking around, and it's like, how does this work? There's no fertilizer applied, there's no pesticides applied, and things look pretty good. I've actually taken soil tests in my woods, like undisturbed. I'm not talking about food plot, I'm talking about the woods. And I was shocked to see that some of the nutrient values are very low compared to what I'm used to for my fields. Now, granted, I'm not growing corn in the woods, so I probably shouldn't be looking at the same nutrient levels I'm used to. But that being said, it's the biology that really makes things work. And that's the paradigm shift in my mind that I'm going through, I would say, right now, trying to figure this out. How do I bring back biology? Now, we all know there's plenty of companies out there selling what we call bugs in a jug or biology. And some of them products are probably good. Some of them probably are what we call snake oil. And some of them may work in North Carolina and not work in Pennsylvania. Or some may work in a clay type soil and not in a sandy soil. So you have to, sift through all that. But, can you buy all your biology? I think you can jumpstart it. I think it can be helpful. There's all kinds of things going on now in that realm. I'm looking into some of it because I feel like for me to go to the next level, I'm going to have to learn more because I kind of feel that I've plateaued a little bit. My organic matter continues to rise slowly on my farms, which is a good indication. But, I am really looking as a farmer here, as a commercial farmer, to be able to grow nutrient dense or high nutrient levels of my tomatoes, for instance, or my pumpkins, my squash. And that's really where it's at for me in trying to figure out how can I take it up a notch. And this will be fascinating to some of you, where I've literally taken soil from the woods and sprinkled it on my fields to try to re-inoculate some of the microbial communities in my fields. It makes sense, doesn't it, Jason?
It does. The reason I'm laughing, I'm laughing because my daughter, she's 12 now, and this probably goes back 4 or 5 years. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast or not, but we did something that made Rick Haney proud. And she said, I have to do a science project. This is stupid. I don't want to do it. Of course, I'm the science teacher in the house. So she comes to me and I said, I got an idea. She's like, oh, here we go. I said, we're going to go to the dollar store. We're going to buy, 6 cheap plant pots, flower pots. And we're going to go out to Donald, DJ Bowman Farms, who's, supposedly our farmer in the county, destroys everything, kills everything, plows, tills, sprays. We're going to get some of his soil. We're going to go to our wood lot. We're going to get some soil there. We're going to go to some of my fields, get some soil there, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to have, I don't know what we had, 3 to 6 different species that we planted in each one. And we did it in all the soils, and we kind of replicated everything. And I said, my hypothesis is that the wood lot is going to be very close to my farm fields, but then this farmer is going to, it's not going to germinate well. It's going to look like, it's going to have chlorosis. There's probably 35 years of glyphosate in it, so it's going to bind up.
Yeah.
And of course, she doesn't want anything to do with any of this crap. She was
Yeah.
like 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, I did it for her to get the thing over with.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. After the project was complete, Steve, I kept doing it because I was like, this
Really?
is incredible. The species profile of the quote unquote weeds are obviously, when you take seed, there's going to be some volunteer seeds in there. Completely different in that between the treatment control and the whole group. And it was absolutely amazing that the woodlot soil did the best, period, by far. And it didn't surprise me.
Right.
The reason that the reason I thought this is because at the time, as you know, Rick Haney and I had developed the ST1 by Carbon Diagnostics, our infield soil health tool. And we had them, thankfully during COVID, which was a great time for me. I spent it on an island called Sanibel, which is just now hammered by Ian. But I had GNT tubes in the ground on the islands. I had had them in the ground in the woodlots here. And when I go to clients, I always stick one in the woodlot the night before when they're grilling the steaks or the burgers or whatever, as a comparison against the fields. And I bet them that I could grow a better crop or food plot in woodland soils than. So yeah, I love that you brought it back to the microbes and biology because nobody ever wants to talk about biology, right? It's always chemistry or. I get kidney stones, and the physicians tell me the same thing over and over and over again. And I've brought up, recently I've brought up balance. I said, I think we have a mineral balance. Can you help me figure it out? Well, of course they can't. They're not. Physicians aren't taught to do that.
No.
I talk about excess and deficiencies and mineral balance, and they just look at me like I'm crazy. So that's the perfect. I wanted to have this podcast primarily. Centered or focused around the different, because you're obviously in Lancaster, I've had people say, do you know Steve Groff? He's the organic farmer. I would never lump you in that category, but can you sort of cover, or can we maybe discuss now the meat and potatoes, which is, you have conventional agriculture, and you know what, I'll let you define each. You have organic agriculture, which obviously is a huge buzzword. And now you have this regenerative agriculture. What's best, and what are the differences and distinctions between each of those?
You missed one. Regenerative organic.
I know. I served you up a softball.
I'll go over them here. We've all heard of organic, that designation, that organic certification. USDA came out. There was a lot of different organic certifying agencies. And about, I'm going to say 15, 20 years ago, the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, came out with kind of a blanket certification for the United States, which gave some more continuity to it. And so it's basically, if you want to look behind the curtain, organic agriculture is a list of, I'll call them rules, or we could say processes. It's a process-based certification. So some of the weaknesses of that is that if you're able to write a very good plan, you get it approved, it's good to go. Yeah, inspectors do come at least once a year, maybe more sometimes, to a given farm to look things over. But the products coming off an organic farm are not required to be tested for basically even pesticide residues or even for their quality in the context of nutrient density and so forth. So the conventional, well, basically organic farmers also, they're prohibited from using any synthetic or man-made fertilizers or things that will kill insects, insecticides, or fungicides, which for diseases.
Plows.
And well, yeah, but we lump all these things into one category called pesticides. So organic prohibits the use of synthetic pesticides. What a lot of people don't realize is there are quite a few now. Matter of fact, there's dozens of organic pesticides. They're basically formulated using the parent material of them as natural substances, but because they're natural, they're allowed. And we can debate all day if they're better or worse than synthetic. And I would say some are, some aren't, and I'm not going to get into that. I do want to preface by saying organic is a good way to grow food, but it may not be the best. There's a lot of things that are weak. One of them is that since they are prohibited from using herbicides to kill weeds, they rely primarily on tillage, plowing, harrowing, cultivating, whatever word you use, stirring the soil up to kill the weeds. And basically, that is harmful to the microbes, which we talked about a few minutes ago. That kills microbes. And when you have a soil that's not protected or not covered on a hot summer day, that soil temperature can reach up to 140 degrees, and that kills microbes. So I affectionately call tillage a tillicide. So you might, if you're going to be fair, you have to lump it in there. And even though that is not natural, it's been kind of allowed in organics as they have no other choice. So then we get on the topic, which is worse for the soil, herbicides or tillage.
Yeah, boy.
And I will say both of them are hard in the soil. Let's just try to use as less possible of both of them. So that's my quick and easy answer. So conventional farmers, the stereotypical conventional farmer is whenever there's something that's a problem in his crop, he's going to reach for something to kill it. So that's kind of the mindset. You wake up in the morning, what am I going to kill today? And that's kind of a mindset. And it's not maybe that over the top, but that's a mindset. If I have an insect, oh, what can I spray? Or if I have a weed, what can I spray? And
but that sort of farming has led to the genetically modified, the Roundup Ready, resistant, that kind of.
That's all included.
So monocultures.
All included in that. Yeah, all included in that. And now we bring up regenerative agriculture, which is the biggest sector in agriculture that's growing. That's literally a fact. Whereas it's looking at regenerating the soil, not prohibiting per se, not giving a list of prohibited substances, but looking more on an outcomes based. This is very critical. This is what determines or defines regenerative agriculture. To say, how is that food? Is it more nutrient dense? And then, well, how did you do that? And then we're not so much concerned about how you did it, although we are, but not so much. The certification is not dictated on that. You mentioned Rick Haney. Rick and his wife Liz have come up with a program, a certification of regenerative verified, and that is more of an outcomes based because they actually test the soil to see if the soil comes up to a certain parameter that would qualify it to be considered certifiable. The organic folks do not do that. That's not the basis of certification. So there is some distinctive differences. Now I have to mention, I brought this up, that regenerative organic, that's a new one that just came about the last couple years. It's basically to cover some of the weak points, I'll say, in the organic agriculture paradigm, whereas they strongly encourage, or I guess I should say require, the use of cover crops and an attempt to use less tillage. There's other aspects that they bring into it, because you have to be certified organic first, and then you can get your additional seal of approval, we'll say, for regenerative organic. I am neither of those two. I am not organic. I don't ever intend to be. I intend to be on this journey of regenerative agriculture. That's another thing where regenerative agriculture is a journey, not so much a destination that you say, okay, I checked off all the boxes, I've arrived, this is what I do. Yeah. Regenerative has the implication that you're constantly improving. That's what I love about it. And that's why I'm firmly entrenched in that thinking right now. Now, will there be something else in 10 years? Probably so. But I'm always about where is the cutting edge of where we're going in the context of food production. And right now, for me, I want to look at how can I grow food that is better. And then we can define all that later. And this can all be translated into food plots, because we're looking for better deer. And I know that's always been the goal. But how we get there, the regenerative paradigm in the food plot is more about you want to have healthier deer, of course, but now we're starting to look into the biology component of the soil where these plants are grown. So I have one more thing to say on this, Jason, and this is something that I have just been kind of made aware of, and it's very intriguing to me. All my life, the idea of nutrients has been fix the lowest nutrient. There, whatever's the
Liebig's law.
lowest.
Yeah.
Exactly. The barrel. If you ever seen the staves, of the barrel, the lowest stave on a barrel is your limit. When you fill a barrel up with water, each stave is a nutrient. It's a great visual on
Law of the
that.
minimum. Yep.
Right. There you go. Thank you. But we've never talked about, I'm going to say, the law of the excess.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our soils are high, especially on aluminum and some other ones that are actually toxic. And we never have addressed that. And here's the little background information that all these pesticides we've put on our crops for years, there are some inert ingredients that they don't have to list on their labels. And by the way, the testing companies don't test for them because it's not in their best interest, because usually they're only testing for things that people are out there selling. So I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but there are some excesses out there that mainstream agriculture doesn't want you to know about.
Sure.
And,
The definition of a conspiracy theorist is somebody who just gets it long before the ignorant people do.
Well, we could apply that to a lot of things recently. That's for sure. We'll have a 5-hour podcast to figure down that road.
I watched people during COVID, and it was just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing how ignorant. And I'm speaking for myself. You don't have to.
Yep.
That's my take on
I'm with
things.
you. Yeah, I'm with you. But anyway, getting back on track.
That excesses
is something that I am starting to get into. I'm not here today to tell you what it all is, but I am now using some testing labs that are testing for more things that I'm used to. And so we're gonna see when we do this again next year, Jason. We should make this your first annual one or whatever. I'll have a lot more to say, because it's really going to be my focus this coming year, and how to deal with the excesses and what to do, and can I do that?
Let's do that, and I'll do that as well. We talked about that, I think, last week or the week before. I'll be doing that, but let's also let me take and deal with the excesses. Not that I have anything against labs.
Right.
Some of my friends own great labs. Lance Gunderson owns one.
Oh yeah.
I think we've, and I'm not eliminating labs. I would do it. I'm all game for it, whatever.
Yep.
But I like to use nature as my lab, and I like to look at plants and microbes and the relationship and let them tell me. Boy, does it take a lot of the C word you used, commitment and patience. But I think it can be figured out that way. It's just going to take longer, and it's certainly more challenging. So, but no, you're going back to your excess. So I'm totally on board with that. That has always been, that was actually something that was taught to us in college, that there can be, you have to look at the balance. And this is what when you go to the, let's say you have a health issue, my doctors hate me generally because I question things, and I'm not looking for old antiquated, something you learned in med school and paid too much for. I'm looking for the latest knowledge and research on it. And I personally believe that there's a mineral balance, whether it's excess, deficiency, whatever, that causes kidney stones. And they want to blame diet and hereditary issues, which is crazy. But anyway, when I bought a citrus grove in Florida, we talked about this. I'm working with so many people from different walks of life. Yeah. And I think the people who are going to hate me are the people from the University of Florida, because going back to your conspiracy theory, they have ownership in rootstock that is or are resistant to HLB or citrus greening, which is what citrus greening has annihilated the Florida citrus by 70+%. They're gone. I mean, some of the best growers in the history of Florida. I just spoke to one who's very influential. He said, Jason, I just threw in the towel and I'm done.
Wow.
So it's destroyed it. And why has it destroyed it? Because of what you hit the nail on the head with chelation. I've been looking at every type of test you can imagine. leaf tissue, sap, soils, Haney's, conventionals, PLFA, you name it.
Yeah.
And I have so much boron that I don't know if I can ever get rid of it. I mean, there are things that they put in those soils, well, those sands, I should say.
Yeah.
That I don't know if I'll ever get it out, or it's going to cost me a fortune, and I'm working on it. I'm going to do it, but I think I love that. We learned intensively about the lowest hole or the lowest stave, Liebig's, Justus von Liebig's law, the minimum, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I think in some things like my business, I probably should plug the lowest hole. The lowest is generally my expenses. But that's good stuff. I absolutely want to come back and talk about what we have figured out with comparing what's in a soil analysis as compared to leaf tissue.
Yeah.
But also I'm going to ask this question. Can we use plants, their relationship with the soil and figure the same thing out?
I think we can, but I don't have the recipe for that. And I wish I did, but it's right now. It's right in front of us. To me, we're ready to do that. And there are people working on that. People that have much more time and are smarter than me in that context. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm aware of some research around the country. Actually, I just had a call this morning. I've been asked to be a consultant for a $10 million project on identifying up and coming cover crops and breeding for cover crop. The benefits of cover crops. We haven't. We've been just using off-the-shelf varieties pretty much for the last 20 or 30 years. Now we need to breed cover crops.
Why?
To be able to, I'll give you an example. I have one called a hairy vetch, which we use in agriculture. It's called Winter King. I started that variety in 1996 or 95 and worked with it for years. And by 2006, I put it in some plots. And it had better winter hardiness, and it survived the winter better. And I have taken that now to I took my 2011 selection, and I used that, licensed it out, and now it is being grown out and sold all over the U.S. And I've continued it, and now I'm planting hairy vetch in the middle of November here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, context zone 5B. For winter hardiness zone, just for context again. And what I'm seeing, I just took the counts the other day before the cold snap, is we're getting significant better selections now. One of the things about my region of the country is we have some of the most freeze-thaw cycles of anywhere. We freeze and thaw, and that's hard on a plant. Now, cereal rye, triticale, they've been adapted to that. They grow well in those conditions, but hairy vetch hasn't. Alfalfa has had trouble with what they call heaving, which is exactly that. It can't, when the ground freezes, it expands and it stretches the roots and breaks them. So I'm selecting the survivors, and so to answer to your question, why cover crop research? That's why. Because I want to be able to plant a hairy vetch later in the year, because in the spring it grows like crazy. In April, there's nothing like it to provide nitrogen for a corn. But we've been limited. We couldn't plant it much past the first week of October. Now we can. So that's what I'm talking about. That's example.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So I think a comment real quick on that regenerative organic. That sounds to me like an excuse, and I have no idea, historical knowledge of who coined it or who started pushing it.
Yeah.
But regenerative organic, and I've heard it before today. That's why I was laughing when you said I forgot one.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like is a misnomer? Is that the right? My wife's a wordsmith, and sometimes I need a thesaurus and a dictionary to talk to her. But misnomer, regenerative and organic just seem like left and right to me. Like, pick one. Which one?
Well, here's my response. I try to look at the big picture, and anytime anybody is going in, I'll say, the right direction, I'm a cheerleader for them. It doesn't mean I agree with everything, but I'm going to say this, that from my perspective, and maybe I could say it this way, my bias, regenerative organic is better than organic. That I can tell you. And for that, I'm grateful. Is it enough? Well, I don't want to build walls. That's one thing why I don't like certifications, because it can build walls. But the reason I like certifications is it kind of gives you a stamp of approval that you've done something that other people recognize, and it gives confidence for the consumer. So I've kind of swung the pendulum on that side. I'm getting certifications now. But yeah, to wrap up the organic or the regenerative organic, to me, I applaud it. I think it's a step in the right direction for the organic community, because I feel they realized they had to do something. They had to plug some of the holes, some of the weak points. And to their credit, I'm going to say it that way, to their credit, they've come up with that. So that's kind of where I stand on that, that whole regenerative organic.
I think if there was a great buzzword that would describe working in the right direction.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if that's regenerative or not, but I agree with you. People say to me, "I know you would never plow," and I said, "I didn't say it. I didn't say I'd never plow. Right. I'm just saying if I make a decision, I probably wouldn't use a mold board or a chisel because they suck. But if I were to go out there and rip a field, which I've seen do good things in places like Iowa and Texas, I would probably be ready to come in right behind that management with some serious diversity, and I would try to heal it quickly. So in other words, it's kind of like a business, right? Especially the seed business. I mean, you know, if sales overall in 2022 have increased or the business grew, I guarantee you there were all these little, ups and downs all throughout the year. I think as long as you're trending in an upward trajectory, that's regenerative to me. And I guess it can be a relative, like you said, context for everyone else. So.
Yeah, and to be clear, I have not tilled any of my fields since 1996. But if I would, let's say, rent a farm that has lots of old groundhog holes in it and ditches and stuff, I would have to till to basically do a one-time reset. Well, that's how I call it. And then we start from there. You put a diverse mix of cover crops in there, and in no time you'll be building soil health. But you have to do the reset first, because so there is a good reason for tillage. Now for me, you couldn't pay me to till my fields for whatever reason, unless there's a reason I haven't thought of. I just don't need it. I don't feel I need it. So there again, context is again the word we use. So yeah, tillage has its place, unquestionably has its place, but it should be very rare and only for a very specific reason that somehow enhances soil health and soil quality. And in the case of groundhog holes and ditches, it fixes the problem that the previous issues from bad management.
When I was in high school, a farmer bought me a bunch of 22 shells and said, "Kill my groundhogs." That's how he fixed it.
There you go. That was a good thing for you.
It was pretty smart. I was excited.
I'm sure.
Broke high school kid. So, no, that's good stuff. Very good. I've got a bunch of check marks we've covered. I will say this. I wasn't going to bring this up much, but you sort of opened the bag a little bit, and I'm glad you did. Being a partner in business with Rick Haney is sort of an advantage nowadays. I watched him design the testing for the Regen Verified. Yeah. And the reason I watched is because several years in the making, I've been wanting to develop a food plot Regen Verified program, if you will. I just didn't know what that looked like. I'm not a big fan of bugs in a jug and, as you said, snake oil, but sometimes a product in a jug has positive impacts. Yes. Sometimes a verification program has positive impacts, and it's a great one. Rick understands how the soil operates, and when he developed that, it's mind blowing. I'm not even going to say too much about it because Rick and Liz are actually both going to be on the podcast talking about my new Regen Verified food plot program. So super excited about that. Yeah. And Liz will probably, because I don't have time to do the admin stuff nor the patients, Liz will probably be doing my admin for me on that. But it's going to be the same obviously the same program, same verification process. And the reason I started getting frustrated with this was probably the same. I know we can talk real quick about this, your CBD and hemp. And I look at you as a leader. I know you call yourself a new kid on the block, but when we started with regenerative wildlife agriculture, whatever you want to call it, I would see people who said, "Hey, I don't use tillage anymore, or I don't whatever. I'm a regen wildlifer," and then they would post something online, and I would scratch my head like, "You just set your soils back big time, with that decision." And it's not a chemical or a plow; it's what they planted, right? And when they planted it. So ever since then, I thought, there needs to be some transparency as obviously the growers are seeking now for food supply and CBD oil, et cetera. So anyway, I'm super excited about that program, and then obviously regeneratively grown products will now be in all of our bags in the future. So
good.
Wanted to ask you a little bit about. I know when you sold Cover Crop Innovators, which I was surprised and disappointed at the same time because I enjoyed it. You said you had a whole new direction you were headed, and that was hemp. Can you talk a little bit about? And I know you can probably pull into context you say one time you said, I don't know if you said, if I read it or you said you're the new kid on the block, but you've taken soils that have been managed properly since the 80s and 90s, and now incorporated hemp. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. First of all, after you do 150 webinars, that was for me, it was like I kind of been there, done that. I very much enjoyed it, but the opportunity in front of me, and I am more in the forefront of things. So when hemp became legal in 2018, the first year we could grow it was 2019. I was ready for it because I had actually looked into it back in 1999. There was a meeting here locally. The idea was to get it legalized so we could grow it as an alternative crop for farmers. And we were way ahead of our time. That, of course, didn't get legalized till for 20 years. But so jumped right in the CBD part. And in 2019, that was just almost everybody knows it was a rage, and everybody jumped in. It was really poorly handled, maybe you might say, because it just left too many people come in. The price was so high. We were all going to make lots and lots of money. And the crop is literally too easy to grow. And there was so much. And here's the thing about it was there was hardly any infrastructure built. I tell people, it's like we got the cars, but there was no roads to drive them on. And then we had that. Then you had CBD everywhere, and then all of a sudden it started showing up in every corner block and every gas station.
Gas station, yes.
And then here's the thing, Jason, that's a lot of people don't really realize. We are regulated on the farmer side. We got to get it tested before we harvest, and we got to get it. We got to get through this testing to make sure it's not marijuana and all that. But on the retail side, there's no test required. It's the stupidest thing. I could give you, a whole case of CBD to sell, and you could start selling it this afternoon if you wanted to. There's no regulation on that end. And, again, let's put on our conspiratorial hats here. Why has the FDA not given us some guidelines for the last, we're solid into this 4 years? And it's just like, it's probably not in their best interest with all the connections that they have and how this is going to, probably hurt big pharma or challenge them, whatever. But aside from that, here we are. So, my I guess you'd say, my uniqueness. Whenever you sell anything, you have to have a uniqueness. Is the regenerative methods that I use, and we actually got involved with Penn State College of Medicine and researching our CBD, and they found it to be superior to others that they were using out there on the open market. And they really had a lot of discussions on why is your CBD better? And it wasn't better because it was showed up at a soil test. It was better because it was killing colon cancer cells in a petri dish. And it was, all that, and melanoma and providing, right now there's in animal studies, but less anxiety and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, there's really something here. So you had mentioned at the outset of this podcast, better soil, better oil. That's where that reference comes from.
That's
So
great.
we were continuing to study this. And here's the thing I want to point out. This is a wildlife podcast, but the same thing happens in deer food plots. You get a better, better soil, higher biologically active soil, you're going to grow better deer. And so, there's a lot to be gleaned here. And the thing I love about the hemp plant is if there's any plant that God made to help humans the most, it has to be the hemp plant, because you can use the fiber, you can use all kinds of things. You can use the seeds are great food to be sprinkled on your food and stuff. You can use the CBD, all the medicinal sides of it. It's an amazing plant. And so that's what I have enjoyed working with it. So cedarmeadow.farm. If any of you want to check that out, we have a pretty robust page there on how we grow our CBD, which, that can translate into food plots or what have you. But so that's the message. What we, and again, I'm gonna tell you, it's a challenge. How do we take that message to a consumer? Do they really care that we have better soil? And I gotta say, you said at the outset, most people, they buy on price. That's true with a lot of things. But when we talk about the value that it brings and so forth, that story needs to be told. It's not easy. I'm just going to tell you, it's not easy, and I still haven't got to the market that I want yet, but it's coming. So we're working on it, and but it's been a fun journey for us.
Yeah, that website is super cool. The Cedar Meadow.
Cedar Tree. Remember Cedar Tree?
Cedarmeadow.farm.
Yeah.
I sent you an email one day about it because I liked it, but I was at the what is it, feed mill or whatever it is, buying dog chews for my dog, and I sent you a text picture that they had it for dogs, and you said, "Yep, got that. We've got that covered."
Yeah.
So what all applications, or just some, I guess, more popular applications for, I can't talk today, for CBD oil, what are the more popular ones for those listening? I know it's a deer podcast, but my clients are all over the place. They're interested in this.
Yeah. Well, it's the two top applications for CBD is better sleep at night. You'll sleep better, more soundly, and then anxiety control. So if that's an issue that you have, you take that when you are feeling anxious, and it helps calm you down. So again, not judging anybody, but those who, I like to say it this way, it's like all the benefits of a high with marijuana without the high. So it's more or less a relaxant. It's that's more or less, that's the easy thing. Now,
I'm not sure if I'd use that line anymore. I think there's a lot of people listening right now who are they're like, no, they're not for me.
I'm just trying to please everybody, I guess. But all that being said, inflammation is another thing that helps, and that can be helped topically, where you can rub it into your knuckles, your fingers, your knees, joints, but also internally, taking it orally. Typically, that's a dropper. You place a few drops under your tongue and let it sit there as long as you can till you swallow. That's the best way to get it into your system. See, our bodies have endocannabinoid receptors. All mammals do. That's why CBD works in mammals just like it does in humans. Any mammal, any animal, basically, it's a mammal. Our bodies are made for this plant. So there are other foods out there that have some cannabinoids in it, but hemp has the most.
I was going to make you tell me what CBD stands for. That's another one, another
cannabidiol, and I guess I'm saying it right. I get twisted up in that too. It's difficult to remember. That's why we just say CBD.
Yeah.
But so all that being said, the thing about it is people don't realize that back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, almost every family had what they called cannabis oil in their medicine closet.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, and there's and it was kind of like your own homemade tincture. Like when you felt bad or whatever, you just took a swig of it, and they made it from hemp. Now then, that had very low THC and probably very low CBD in it, and it was maybe a two to a 1-to-1 ratio, but it was really well known to be helpful for your well being. And then, without getting too deep into the story, but when the pharmaceutical companies started to get the opportunity out here, they saw that as a threat. The pulp people with wood saw it as a threat. The cotton people saw the fiber as a threat, and basically they used marijuana as a stigma to ban the whole plant so that the corporations could patent their own little things or they continue with their commodities.
Of course.
So then it was interesting. World War II happens, and all of a sudden they needed more rope for World War II for the Navy ships, and they allowed it to be grown for 2 years to make more rope, and then they banned it again. And so now, as we unearth some of these background stories, the news media at the time was very willing to cooperate with that cover up. And so fake news has been around longer than just the last couple of years. So here we are today. We've lost 70, 80 years of research essentially, but we're starting up again. That's why I believe in the plant, because I know it can do so much. But, we're not getting any encouragement from the FDA. They're not actively studying it. So what does that tell you? It's just it's just interesting how money talks. You can't patent a plant, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a true grassroots effort. I will imagine some of the companies that do well will be bought up by big pharma at some point.
Yeah.
For whatever, you can't help it. That's the way it goes. But right now, here we are. That's kind of the state of the industry. I'm in it because I'll tell you what, Jason, I have never had so many people talk to me and thank me for taking their migraine headaches away, for making them feel better from their joints are more limbered. Someone liked to enjoy crocheting, and they said within 2 hours after they put this, they could start crocheting again, knitting and that kind of stuff. Sleeping better. That myself, I feel I know I sleep better when I take it. So for me as a farmer, I've never had people that ate my tomatoes and come up with me and gave me their health benefits. So it's really rewarding. It feels like, wow, I'm really helping humanity here, literally. And so that's been really rewarding for me.
I have about 10 different questions I wanted to ask you. So at the very end there, I'll just put this one first because it was so when I had issues that were blamed on chronic Lyme, which is a whole nother full day argument. I went down the herbal medicinal type path, and one thing I learned was a lot of those herbal remedies, well, a lot of things. One, they truly worked or work.
Okay.
Two, the pharmaceutical companies pretty much stole them, and generally from a microbe or a plant, and made them more heroic, right? So they put them in a lab and just do various things to them and make them work quicker and more heroic.
Yes.
But I guess I heard you say that people's headaches and crocheting within 2 hours or whatever. So this isn't something. When I took a lot of, my gosh, I was taking pills. I don't know, almost 100 a day, and these are herbs, right? These aren't These aren't pharmaceutical made.
Gotcha.
You have to take a lot of them. You have to take them for a long time, and you have to be consistent with them in order to realize the benefits, whether it's joint relief or whatever. Are you saying that? I wasn't really planning on this, but I'm kind of intrigued. Are you saying that there's two parts to my question. There's which I guess you just did. Within 2 hours, you can feel the benefits, whether it's fall asleep or relax or whatever, your joints. And then do you take them sort of proactively and daily or regularly?
So to be clear, the 2 hour reference was to crocheting. When you take it to go to bed, I take it right when I lay down, and it's within 15 minutes. I'll say that's within 15 minutes, but usually I might be sleeping by then. It just helps you relax, drift off. So it depends what issue you're trying to address. If it is inflammation, it's going to take a little longer and more consistency. Anybody who has taken, like you described there, I'll say it, natural herbal remedies, it's in that category. No question. So and it's going to affect some people different. You'll have to almost, I hate to use this word, but self-medicate.
Yeah.
Because some people, the only side effect that we've noticed from sleeping is if your body doesn't need very much, you may start having some pretty wild and crazy dreams. And if that's the case, just back off a little bit. Don't let it freak you out.
What
You
if
just
you
have to
already get
medicate.
that? Do they get wilder and
Well,
crazier?
I don't know about that, but you'll just have to try it. And I just again, just literally 2 days ago, someone tried it for the first time, and their comment the next morning was, I think that really did help. And I'm like, well, keep it up. We'll see.
There you go.
So yeah, you have to kind of learn. Everyone's body is different, and you do have to learn. That's something we lost as well. And we feel bad. We want a pill. We want it fixed, and that's okay. But when you're dealing with herbs and we'll just, for lack of a better word, alternative medicines, sometimes you have to kind of self-medicate. And what actually is doing they do it all the time in the pharmaceutical. They all the time are switching out medicine, but that's usually because of side effects.
Yeah.
The nice thing about naturals is very rarely side effects.
Right.
So
right.
that's a benefit.
After taking all that I've taken, I would agree with that. There are no known or noticed side effects.
Yeah.
Very good. Do you have any that act as, I know you mentioned the Tillicide earlier. That's a great one. We may name this podcast Tillicide after that.
There you go.
Do you have any bureaucides that get rid of bureaucrats?
That I haven't thought about. I guess you're supposed to do that at the voting booth.
No, that doesn't work anymore. No,
if you can trust the system, which has been shaken. So
no. I tell people that I have a bureaucide, and they say, "Yeah, what is it?" And I say COVID, because it brought out the truth, and all of their motivations were closely analyzed. If you were paying attention,
I'm with you.
That's good. I congratulations. It's cedarmeadow.farm, and obviously it's Cedar Meadow Farm, and you put the dot between the meadow. There's no .com. Yeah, and you can buy it right on here, right?
Yep, you can buy it right off the website. My wife will ship it out to you the next day.
Nice. So last question on the CBD. If somebody has used it in the past when it first became legal and whatever, like me, I used it for a little while and just didn't really notice anything.
Yes.
Would you agree that they would need to try again from the better, like you said, better soil? And that's your quote, by the way, better soil, better oil.
Yeah. I'm not a over the top salesman, so I'll say, hey, you want to give ours a shot? Just try it. Because sometimes what you got may not have been a good quality, or sometimes people don't understand the milligrams that are listed on each bottle. It's listed as how many milligrams are in a bottle. Typically, they're in 1 ounce bottle. So if you're taking the dropper full of a 250 milligram bottle, that's 1/6 the dosage of a 1200 milligram bottle like we have. And so that's a huge difference. So I asked the question, what milligrams? And most people shrug their shoulders. I don't know. Well, you do need to learn that because, if we're going to say compare apples to apples, you need to know that. And then it's like, well, theirs is a lot cheaper. Well, no kidding. It's 1/6 the strength or 1/2 the strength, or, what have you. So these are just some of the nuances of learning to know how the products are packaged and everything.
Sure.
But I just tell people, the only thing I can tell you is to try it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
That's it. I mean, just try it. And I will say this though, Jason, and again, it's at the risk of being considered a salesman. If it doesn't do anything for you, double the rate. Just see, then you'll know, or triple the rate, quadruple. I mean, I have done in my testing, I've done 4x, 10x just to find out. And you get pretty sleepy when you're up at that 4x. You could feel pretty drowsy. But then it's doing something. Nope. See, it's without that. You don't have that. No.
So have you ever had any fail that was more of that?
No, we test ours. Ours is tested. We're very careful about that.
And I know early on, weren't they basically anything that quote unquote failed? I couldn't buy that as excess arbitrage. They didn't they bury it or dig holes or?
I don't know. There's all kinds of stories. Yeah, kinds of stories out there. But we do test ours right through several times through the process, because that is one thing where, and again, there's just no regulation on the back end of it. I'm a low regulatory guy.
Yes.
but you got to have some regulations at the end. That's just wrong because it is a health. The problem is if they get too much THC or marijuana in it, and you get kids taking it, and or even adults and it's just like that is very, very egregious. That cannot happen.
I concur.
So
very good. Well, hey, look how we turned a deer podcast into a CBD hemp podcast. So, all right, we'll wrap it up with, is there anything, well, I guess first I want to acknowledge and thank you for, I was going to joke and say, you know what, you made me close down the lights on Cover Crop Innovators, but I'm using you to lead off the year, 2023. You're the first one, you're a lead off. But then I sat down for some reason and pulled up that old Cover Crop Innovators, what was that, webinar, and it sort of brought it full circle for me. I thought, you know what, we weren't shutting the lights off. We were kicking something off back then.
There you go.
So
yeah, I like it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for spending time. I'm glad we finally got to do this, and I'll hold you to that 1 year annual deal, and we'll talk about what we learned.
I'm looking forward to it, Jason. Thanks.
Very good. All right. Hey, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. There you go.
Okay. That was good.
Okay, there you have it. Cover crop and no-till legend, Steve Groff. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone to check out the new Drop-Tine seed website, droptineseed.com. It's definitely new, and we have a lot more changes coming with new products. Perhaps most importantly, the old go-to blends have been tweaked once again, after another year of feedback directly from you. Super appreciate that. The reason they are so great is because of all that direct and immediate feedback. So all the go-to spring reload, summer nourishment, fall reload, perennial reload, the responses from the biology in the soils has been absolutely amazing. But the most exciting and innovative product new this year, as I mentioned before today's podcast, is the Drop-Tine Ancient Grain product that is now out. Super excited. January 2023. Again, this is sort of the culmination of many, many years of research, and I'm really looking forward to getting these new ancient grains on your properties all across the country. Again, that's an early spring plant, so get ahead of everything this year. Get those ordered. 2022 was a fantastic year, and there's no doubt that 2023 is going to be even more exciting as we continue to collect massive amounts of data and experiences from all across the country and strive to produce the most innovative and beneficial food plot products out there and on the market. Real quick, since Steve brought it up, the Drop-Tine Regen Verified Program, Steve was referring to a different Regen program, but we have developed a very similar program. And if you are interested, since Steve brought it up, I'll go ahead and say it. We're actually going to have a podcast coming up here soon talking about some more of the details. So our new Drop-Tine Regen Verified Food Plot Program, if you're interested, certainly shoot me an email. So thank you, and appreciate you listening today. If you have any questions about anything we talked about or about that Regen Verified program or the ancient grains, please email me, jason@droptineseed.com. Thank you, and goodbye.